another level.
I think we've had pretty similar paths. You started out as an athlete and transitioned and all this stuff. So I think we've quite a bit to talk about.
Yeah. Hold on. Yeah. Wait. What sport did you play growing up?
I played 1 year of college football. I grew up playing. Sports was my whole thing. I hated being in front of people and audiences and all that. Like I was like, get me on a field where I can kick a ball or throw it, and I'm great. I'm fine. I don't have to say anything. I don't have to make a fool out of myself.
Right.
And I just that's where I felt the most comfortable. And then after freshman year of college, and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to the NFL. I'm tired of getting my ass kicked on the practice field. I decided to just give it up, and then decided I was going to go to medical school, and I studied biology pre-med, and then ended up with that. And we can talk more about this on the podcast, but this is more of
no, we can start. We're started.
Hey, let's start. Okay.
Let's do it. Yeah.
I guess.
No, wait.
Let's officially start.
Because I love. Hold on. I think that's. It's really interesting because you say you don't love crowds, and yet as an athlete, you are a performer. Like there is sort of this like trying to also get the crowd on your side, like knowing about energy and, because when you have a crowd like behind you, it's like it gives you that extra umph to kind of play with and like move forward. And, because it can help you. Like I've played tennis matches where, I'm like, I don't want to be there. I'm fucking tired. I'm like, this was college tennis, and there was like kind of like it was like a big match, I think against UCLA, and I was like, I don't want to be here. I'm like,
where did you go to school?
Duke. So I had a full tennis scholarship to Duke. I played for Duke, and we were like ranked number 1 in NCAAs, and this is like my freshman year. But I just remember probably. It was just like a really, really tough match. And I think I had beat her before. And then all of a sudden, one of my teammates just started cheering, just like one person. All you need is one person. Susie, you got this. Let's go.
Yeah.
And then slowly you're like, yeah, like I'm getting just like, this is someone who I beat, but I just was just getting just wrecked. And then all of a sudden, like I got all this energy, totally won the second set. So it's the energy of being a performer. So how did you be, if you're an athlete, how, so you didn't get in your head about that, having people watch you?
I'd say I did. And this is where I give you a lot of credit, because as a tennis player, it's you and you. And on a team, football, baseball, basketball, you've got your teammates, so that even if you're maybe not having the best game, or if, you make a mistake, you got your teammates there to pick you up and, just pat you on the back and be like, yo, you got the next one. So I like that aspect of being on a team and having a common goal. And it's really interesting, like what we were just talking about, having that energy of a crowd or a coach or someone that infusing you with whatever it is that you need to be able to perform at your best. And I think that's why it was an easy transition from being an athlete to acting, because it requires you to essentially be able to harness all this energy. And what was great about my acting classes, what I really loved about it, when I started taking acting classes when I was 24 years old, I had done a little bit of acting growing up, but it was, again, I was more into sports. I would get I would just get terrified in front of audiences. And I always kind of felt like, well, that's just how it is. And that's who I am. So the stage and being in front of the camera and speaking is just not for me. And as I got older, I started to realize where that was holding me back. My inability to articulate how I felt. And especially as a man, we don't always like to say how we're really feeling or admitting when we are feeling vulnerable or whatever. So we just kind of grunt and, knock into each other.
But that's also an athlete sensibility. Women too. That's the person in the, what was it? The gladiator in the arena, right?
Mentality. Yeah. I could see that. And I did see a few of your clips where you were just smashing the shit out of that tennis ball. And then I saw a clip where you were throwing your racket. I was like, ooh, I like this girl. I was like, I think we're going to get along.
So that clip that you saw, that was actually, so I compiled, I've been hired for more tennis things in acting than I can count. Like, it's like 5 things I've been hired for. So that racket throwing was for a scene, but I did used to throw my racket when I was like 12 to 15, and you just fucking like a warrior. Yeah, so like you're seeing a glimpse of like, it's true. It's like but then I learned to not, I think Nadal and Federer, Federer, he also like stopped throwing his racket because he apparently like used to throw his racket all the fucking time until he learned how to channel the energy. So that's kind of, I had like a sports psychologist, so I learned how to not throw the racket and just channel it better. But like, when I remember 12 to 15, just fucking like wreck that, the inner Viking. So wait, continue on your story of like not, accessing those emotions. So then we had a similar path. It is really interesting. So then you're having to jump to feel all those emotions. So how was that transition? And so you're going from grunting to just express yourself to, I'm embodying the feminine spirit.
Well, I think, a teenage boy's vocabulary consists of I'm fine, good, and there's some sort of Neanderthal grunt. And so I realized that as I was getting older and I was in college, as I was mentioning, I was studying biology, pre-med, was planning on going to medical school. And then my senior year, I heard on the radio about come to the Talent Search America, the Davenport Holiday Inn. And a buddy of mine in my fraternity had done some modeling work, and he would come back on the weekends, after the weekends, and say, yeah, I just was in Florida or California working with all these supermodels. And I was like, well, if Tim can do it, maybe I can do it too. So I went to this thing, and it was like American Idol. You walk up, 2 ladies at a table, and they're like, yeah, you're a little short, but I mean, I'm barely 5'11". And for modeling, that's short. So you got to be like 6 foot, 6'2".
That's crazy. 5'11" is a good height. That's a good height.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. But I went to this model convention after I graduated. I took the MCAT, but I wrote about this in my book in the sense that I think sometimes we find ourselves on these paths in life that aren't necessarily our paths. They were just they're there. And so we kind of get pushed into them. And I felt like, my dad was a doctor. I liked the idea of being able to help people. And my dad would always talk about just how he loved what he did and the whole ability he was an obstetrician gynecologist, delivered 9,000 babies in his career.
Wow.
And so he loved bringing life into the world. And so I just thought that was such a cool thing. I went to go watch him deliver a baby once, scrubbed in. And after that, I was like, you know what?
I'm good.
So I was interested in like sports medicine, but then I was also really interested in traveling. And I thought the idea of like, I heard about Doctors Without Borders, and so thought maybe doing that sort of thing. And then this whole modeling thing came up, and at 21 years old, how can you know what you want to do for the rest of your life? Do I really want to commit myself to this career of medicine right now when I don't even know who the heck I am? I haven't been really around the world. I don't know what's out there. And this is where I feel like where a lot of the anxiety comes into place especially with, a lot of younger kids nowadays, where I think we expect people to know what to do and have all the answers at such an early age, when how can you expect someone to make those kinds of decisions when they really haven't experienced life? And I was fortunate enough to get hooked up with a model agent after college. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I just need to take a year before going to medical school to really explore this and see what this is all about. And what I'm really grateful for is that my parents were supportive of that. And because I know a lot of parents are, would just say, nope, you're going this direction. And I found myself in New York City and Europe. And it was great because for the first time I was out of my environment of who people knew me to be. And because it's an echo chamber of essentially how you grow up and where you grew up and where you were born, who your parents are, what school you went to, what religion you were raised, a lot of that just is reinforced. And essentially what it becomes is you start playing a role in your life that maybe you were miscast in. And this is what I talk about in my book, and in my some of the coaching that I do, I really tap into the essence of who you are on a deep core level. And this is what acting taught me when I first jumped into acting class. I'm sure you could add to this. I didn't necessarily know who I was. I knew myself to be Colin from the south side of Chicago who played football. My mom is from Ireland, so I'm Irish. My dad has some German descendancy, and so I guess that's who I am. But I think where we get nervous and where we feel like we don't fit into life and where the anxiety comes from is that most of the time we, again, are trying to play these roles that we think we should be or who we think we are, and we really haven't intentionally decided who we are and gotten to choose who we are, because so much of where we come from and how we grow up gets impressed upon us. And so when I found myself in New York and Europe, where I met all these people from different cultures and different religions and having these discussions late at night, on
love those
Champs-Élysées and these cafes and with like these Swedish guys and Russian girls and Ukrainian men, whatever. I was like, wow, this is really cool. Like, you believe in this, and at the end of the day, we all have our beliefs, but ultimately what it comes down to is, I think the common denominator for all of us is that we just want to find purpose in life. We want to find connection. We want to fall in love. We want to feel like we belong. And I think what happens is a lot of the times we see cultures and religion and different societal expectations prevent us from having what we ultimately desire on a deep core level. And so this is what acting has really allowed me to do, is to explore all of this. And I found it fascinating to be able to show up in an acting class and not have to be that people pleaser and that guy that was like, hey, everything's great, everything's fine. And my teacher, as you know, in acting class, it's like, no, stop. That's inauthentic. Stop lying to yourself. Stop lying to us. If you're not ready to be vulnerable and real, there's the door. And I was like, holy crap. Like, what is this? And I was like, just so, I was
Don't
so
you think
curious.
In sports, you get to show the savage side of you? Don't you think that's like, you get to access the savage? Like, I'm recently releasing some of the episodes of Peekaboo Street and like Marty Fish, and talking about that. Like with Marty, it's like you have to be the most savage. So there is, but you can't show vulnerability and emotion. So people are just learning to do that. The vulnerability part. I think where there's mental health and everything like that. But don't you think that that's like you're only accessing, like, even though it could be stoicism in sports, but it is also like it's kind of your shadow a little bit.
Yeah. That's one thing I think why people do love sports so much, because they get to tap into that savage gladiator archetype and that shadow side of ourselves that a lot of the times we don't explore. And in a lot of ways, especially men nowadays, I feel like we've been emasculated in so many ways that we don't feel like we have permission to
be a savage.
Well,
it's you know what it is? It's the like evolved man. I think like the savage is so necessary when it comes to war, when it comes to protection, when it comes to all those things, because you don't want the artist on the front line. You want the artist to do a sonnet about war and deconstruct what's happening in the war, and it'll be so beautiful and poetic. But if you're like, being like, hey, yo, my man, like, as a woman wanting your man to protect you, or, I can try to do my best as a woman to try to, I learned martial arts and trying to orient myself properly in the world to help best protect myself. But it's that primal feeling of wanting, wanting your man to go out and hunt, and wanting him to like, be like, and so I think there needs to be a reintegration of like the fully evolved man, where it's like we've cast out the savage, where it was so necessary because it wasn't fully integrated. It was maybe more compartmentalized, where the savage would be so savage, and then suddenly it would be very polite society or whatever that is, where it's like you have to like exist, but then they were too compartmentalized. And so now it's like, well, we don't want the savage. The savage isn't here, but you need the savage. Like you need the shadow to come and like protect, and because otherwise it becomes Gotham City if you don't have the savages complete also like contending anarchy, like with the Joker. You need the Batman to protect from the Joker, otherwise it's fucking mayhem. So you just have to like reintegrate where with Batman, when he was like trying to not come to the dark side of the Joker, where he's like, well, if you kill me, like you'll win, but you'll also lose, in that, like the Dark Knight, so good. But so he's like testing him to be like, you're just like me kind of, and so I think it's the evolved man. I think there was this quote by Jordan Peterson that he was talking about in the Bible about how the meek will inherit the earth, and how that was interpreted as like the meek, like, but what he's like, meek actually was translated as sheathed swords. So like basically that you have the ability to kill a motherfucker, but you're choosing not to. So it's like, I think it's like the Batman, where it's like, you're the evolved man. So you need the savage to contend with the Joker, but you also want to be at the highest evolved level. So you're integrating like the masculine and the feminine together. So it's not compartmentalized anymore. And I think but that's just like for women too, like the devouring mother is the archetype of like the shadow side of for the feminine, where it's like, my children will never leave me. Like it's, ooh.
Yeah. I find this is, think we're circling back onto energy, where, there's the male and female energy parts of both of us. And I did see that Jordan Peterson interview, where what I really liked about that was how he described that a man needs to be able to destroy and to create chaos. And a woman will only feel safe in a man's presence when she knows he's capable of it, but that he demonstrates restraint. And this is where the myth of the prince slaying the dragon to save the princess. And the dragon is essentially a representation of that dragon within us. That's our savage part of who we are as a man. Yeah. And when a woman or
super hot,
else, right? And so there is that dark, attractive, primal attraction to that type of energy, but we've got to demonstrate to the people around us as men and women that we are capable of restraining and slaying that dragon when necessary, to make sure that the people around us know that we won't direct that sword towards them, but that if need be, we're going to fuck some shit up and keep the people around us safe. And I think that's where a lot of women nowadays aren't feeling that from men. So they slide into their masculine energy, and it makes them more into the bossy, nagging type of part of who they are.
You're mothering.
And they don't even realize what they're doing. And men just need to essentially, there's an author named David Dada or Dida. I forget how to say his name.
David Data, the way of superior man. I totally talked about this on one of my previous on the Luke Cook episode. We talked about David Data, about the way of the superior man, about integrating both and like how to exist in all those. I read the book. I gave it to a boyfriend at the time. I think he took one, he like kind of read it and he's like, fuck this noise. And I'm like, this is why I mean, like David had some like also, he had some interesting takes. I haven't reread it, so I don't know if it still holds up, but there were some like takeaways that I thought were like helpful.
Yeah. And I think if more people read this sort of stuff and took an acting class to explore these shadow parts of themselves and to explore the feminine side of themselves and the masculine side of themselves, both as a man and a woman, I think we would show up in relationships with a better understanding of who we are and show up in a way where we are intentionally creating ourselves around who we want to be and who we choose to be, rather than showing up feeling like we got to act macho, around our guy friends and act like, yeah, man, or feeling like we can't demonstrate or show our vulnerability. And what I loved about acting class was that it was a safe space as a man in his 20s to be able to explore a lot of this stuff and get practice on learning how to communicate with another human being. I was like,
totally,
holy crap, this is cool. The words are right here on the page. I don't have to come up with the words. They're right here. And then the person in front of me, they can't run away. They have to stand there and talk to me. This is where you start to, what I loved about it was you get to practice just having these authentic conversations and then constructing who you need to be in order to be able to convey that communication and understanding that communication is not just the words on the page. It is so much more. And it essentially is 90% of our communication of how we communicate to other people is how we show up, our nonverbal cues, the way in which we deliver our communication. And that's essentially what I've taken from my acting classes. And I do some communications consultancy. That's what you see here. This is what my Beyond Impact communications class is all about, where I teach an acting class for non-actors.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, there's like, I'm just thinking about, in terms of acting, because I was listening to Meryl Streep. She was talking about something, and this is kind of how I feel, is that the way into the character. I mean, it's basically you're like, okay, how am I? And especially this podcast is really kind of like helped me really get into everyone's sort of process where it's like, okay, I'm playing a version of myself, and how do I, you dial up certain things or turn down certain things. Like, it's kind of like frequency dial. And Meryl Streep was talking about the way into the character is like, she's like finding how she's like them. And everything is, I think a lot of mine is very story based of like creating these new memories or sometimes you can like pull from your like previous, your current life or whatever. And sometimes it like very much mirrors what's happening in your life. But for Meryl Streep, it's like, you get to play all these different like archetypes. It's kind of like, I mean, it's Halloween. Very much like,
why do people love, like, why is Halloween the most popular holiday of the year? It's because we get to play these roles that we don't get to play, and whether that's like the slutty cop or the gladiator or whatever, it's like for that one day we have permission to play and traffic in our shadow selves. And as actors, that's what I find incredibly attractive about it, is that it's that, but it's also therapy. It's cathartic. I feel like I've been able to work through a lot of personal issues, such as living through the World Trade Center where my place got destroyed. And I found myself trying to navigate, I almost died and watching people jumping out of the towers when that happened. And then being diagnosed with cancer. And, I was recently diagnosed for the third time with cancer. And so navigating what that looks like. And I've realized that my acting is, when I'm doing my auditions here, I get to pour all of that frustration and angst and anger and frustration and savage into these characters. And this is where I feel like if more people knew about the benefits of acting class, this is where I deeply fell in love with acting, because I started to see acting as a way for me to start to really explore more about who I am so that I wasn't showing up in life nervous about who I was, where I could actually, the funny thing was, as I was starting to audition for some of these roles, I was walking into these auditions and I realized from the analysis that you do as an actor, the who, what, when, where, why, the circumstances, what's your objective, understanding what your core values are as these characters, doing all this work on my characters. I was going into these auditions and I felt like I knew my characters better than I even knew myself. And so I started to realize like, wow, this is crazy. And whether you know it or not, we subconsciously create who we are. And it's based on, again, our upbringing. And so I started to really take a deep look at, am I who I am because of I've chosen to be this person, or is it because by default, this is who I am and this is who I'm supposed to be? And what I liked, I heard Tony Robbins said this, where in his documentary on Netflix, I'm Not Your Guru, in the beginning,
great.
It's amazing. He says, I constructed this self-identity. He goes, I constructed this motherfucker. I've done a lot of work to be able to show up in front of these audiences and be able to inspire and to motivate and to create transformation. I didn't just wake up and this is who I am. And this is where I think a lot of people feel like they're stuck because of where they are at, or if they're in a certain relationship. And I'm telling you, if you just do some of this work to get more intimately connected to who you are, where you choose who you are, it helps you navigate through some of these really difficult parts of life, like I've found myself in. And this is where I do some of my coaching with regards to helping people navigate through challenges, or if they have a goal or a dream of pursuing something. I'm like, well, shit, I went out to Hollywood and worked with the likes of Sylvester Stallone, Gary Oldman, and Kate Hudson. And like, if I can do this shit, you can do this, because it's all about intentionality.
Man, yeah, I have so many thoughts. Because what is something I've heard from Jim Carrey is similar to what you're saying. So he created this persona, or he created this identity. And, I think he came into like the last like 7 years, he was having a deconstructing of the self. And I feel
he said, I act because I'm broken. Did you hear him say that?
Yeah, no, I saw that, but I was like, okay, I'm like, we're also infinite consciousness and we're whole and we're perfect as is. Like, I think this is my working theory about God and consciousness, is that like every part of the consciousness was supposed to, we're all supposed to access, like, and live certain, like, I think I've heard this before from Joe Rogan, where we're all each other living separate lives, so like there's no separation between me and you and everyone else. And so, I heard, like, when I've studied a lot of near-death experiences, and a lot of people they have like a very similar trajectory of what happens in the near-death experiences and what is said and all the wisdom that they come back with. And basically that it's like you've decided, you've preordained and predestined to, and you can choose, you can change it at any time, but this is like the pathway so you can learn about, just like, so consciousness and God can understand itself and continue to, like, expand and grow. And so I feel like I don't agree that like any of us are broken. I think like once we go into the divine, we go back and we're like cleansed of like all the sins and everything's like, oh, we're one. And this was kind of like a matrix sort of experience.
Yeah.
And
so true.
So is like, if that's the experience that I think Jim Carrey needs to have, of feeling broken, and maybe he feels that way. And I'm not discrediting, if that, like that's validating for why he feels broken, of probably a lot of trauma. I myself have like gone through a variety of trauma, but I also think, to your point, coming back to the Tony Robbins, to the Joe Dispenza of it all, it's a choice. And so like me trying to unlearn generations of like my mother's neuroses of just like anxiety, of where I think now she's like so happy to be free from it all. But it's like all these like, I feel like I was born with an innate personality. So, of just, like I feel like I was always like, I feel like the person I was at like 5 is still that's like wild child, free spirit.
You don't have any kids, do you?
No, I'd love to. Like, I'd love to have a family, and I have nieces.
Nephews.
My nieces are amazing. One is like my mini me. She's
So you notice, like, even at a very early age, I've got 7 nieces and nephews, and even like, do you have brothers, sisters?
Yeah, so I my sister. So they're it's so interesting because our voices are the same, and sort of like our ability, like we have similar sensibilities, but then we look at the world in a very vastly different way. But then like her daughter is she's like, I don't know, like you guys are so similar. Like we're both kind of ADD and we're both like very empathic, but then we're both like, we have just similar sensibilities. And so it's just interesting. And then, I've like my other friends who have a kid who are like, oh no, that's her. She's her own person. So,
so you notice at a very early age, even in infancy, you can tell that the spirit or the soul of whoever that little kid is, at a very early age, you can see it demonstrating itself, where at a very early age, I was always just kind of quiet. And, my older sister, my younger brother, my mom said that they were just a little more outgoing. And she said, Colin, you were always the one that would just look around and you would observe everything. And then she said, you were the one that would stand at the bottom of the stairs and look up. Carrie and Sean would be the ones that would like try to climb up the stairs and fall down or get stuck or whatever. And she was like, one day you just stood there or sat there and stared. And then one day you just stood up and then walked up the stairs. And so I think we innately do have these soul spark personalities of who we are. And I think, sometimes you hear these stories about mediums connecting with past selves. And there's a documentary called The Boy Who Lived Before. And this like 6-year-old boy was channeling his previous life on another. And there was information that this 6-year-old boy was telling his mom there was no way he could have known this had he not lived in this other part of Scotland or England or something like 30 years prior. So it just begs the question of, are we these one soul, like one human body experiences, or are we these souls that keep reincarnating every few years or whatever it is? And this is where, I grew up going to Catholic grade school and high school. And I was always that kid that was like, well, how did Jesus walk on water? And how did that work? How did this work? Like, I was that annoying kid who would just ask all these questions because I'm curious, and I would rather know the truth and try to discover something for myself rather than just blindly accept or believe something just because that's how it's been all these ages. And then as I started traveling and meeting these other people from different countries and different religions, and it's like there's over 10,000 different gods throughout history and 30,000 different religions. And it's like, well, who's right? And we see so many wars and so many people being killed over religion. I was like, okay, what would Jesus do? What would, like, if God were to come back down or Jesus were to come back down right now, who knows if he was the son of God or whatever. What I believe is that I think at the end of the day, if Jesus were the son of God or whatever, and he were to come down, he'd look around and be like, what the fuck is going on here? I didn't say this. I didn't mean it for it to be this. It really just comes down to, there's a really cool meme that I saw, and it was Moses holding the 10 Commandment tablets. And on one side it said, don't be an asshole, be cool. And honestly, those are my commandments. Like, just be a cool person. And just, everyone's just trying to do right by themselves and their family. And when someone is doing something that is negative or mean or saying crap on social media, it's coming from a place of where someone doesn't do that unless they're hurting and they've got a need or a desire. Instead of attacking them, the best thing you can do is understand where they're coming from and what their need is. Because if you keep negating it or trying to cancel someone or keep putting someone down or criticizing them for what they believe in, there is going to be, I guarantee you, no resolution whatsoever, or no traction and no connection to be able to create any sort of solving anything or creating any sort of ability to get what either of you needs to be able to live a normal, happy, just purposeful life. I mean, we're only here for what? I mean, we're turning 52 next week, and this is crazy. It's like, where has the time gone by? And you look back, and I don't want to look back in my life and think back, well, how much time did I waste worrying about what other people thought, or worrying about trying to correct someone if I didn't agree with them, and just try to find and navigate a way to decide who I want to be in this world and who I want to be in the face of whatever it is that we face, and then try to share and spread whatever insight and knowledge that I have. I don't claim to have all the answers. It just blows my mind when I see people jumping on the news and on social media spouting out stuff as if it is hard truth, when it's like, okay, that's your opinion. Like, and people are watching this, and this is dangerous. And this is where I get savage, because this is where I guess you could say I care more about the truth, and making sure that people are not being used by some dogma or ideology that puts them down just because of where they were born or the color of their skin. So this is the stuff that I get passionate about, as you can see.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, ideas can take a hold of you, and it's really interesting because it's like I feel like I have some of my best friends were constantly grappling with ideas and workshopping things and disagreeing a lot, like sometimes. And there's pushback, and there's, but like that's where the growth is. That's where, and I think that's why I love New York so much, because it's such a melting pot, because everyone, like all my friends, like literally last night, I was like chatting. So my friend who's staying with me right now, Leah, one of my besties, I was like at her show, and there was a comedian, and we were very in disagreements, like totally could not. I was just like, wow. Okay. And like, but it's really interesting because it's like, let me hear what you have to say about this. Like, and it's like politics, or it was getting very political, and I'm not political. I'm more of put yourself together first and fix yourself first before you start being like, well, putting it outside of yourself. And I'm definitely, I sometimes it's easy to be like, fuck you, billionaire. But like, just because it's, I guess it's like fun, and to be like, oh, if it wasn't for the billionaires and the thing in the system and like, that might be true, but that doesn't help me get any further to access my divine self. That doesn't help me get any, like, to be a better person. That doesn't, it doesn't help me. It just, I'm now putting the responsibility for my own life on somebody else. So there was just an interesting moment of just me and this guy just kind of, going like, fuck, like he was just getting really hard in the paint. And I was just having to be like, all right, let me sit with this. Let me hold this for a second. Let me contend with what you're saying and hear you out on this, and be like, let me think carefully about, like, what do I actually believe? And so when you're talking about like the ideology that takes a hold of people, and I've had this conversation with one of my best friends where I think it can be very scary and we've like, sometimes when I've been like, well, I think this, and as you get really defensive, and I think sometimes it's this, if you're not like secure in those ideas, if that like, then you feel that it'll all fall away. And if it all falls away, what is your structure of like understanding the world? Who are like,
yeah.
And so
people
like
hold on to these ideas and these self-identities, because they, I mean, it's what we know. It's what we grew up with. And I don't think you have to throw away the baby with the bathwater.
Yeah.
I think there's a balance of knowing where you came from, appreciating your values and your traditions, but then also understanding too that those are of the material world, and that who I believe we are these spiritual beings having this human experience. And how amazing is it for me to have the heritage of being Irish and enjoying the luck of the Irish and stories about leprechauns and Guinness beer, and I've been
And
to
a
Ireland,
pot of gold.
and a pot of gold. But does that mean it's true, or that it needs to be completely shoved to the wayside just because it's not true? I think there's a happy ground medium where I think we need to demonstrate a little more tolerance and a little more kindness with regards to the people in our lives, and understanding that not, one rule doesn't fit for everyone. And that's the hard part of politics in America, because we've got so many different cultures, and we have such a melting pot of a history, where I think as a country, we're in our infancy of trying to figure out who we are. And so we've got to go through these growing pains, I think. And I think it's just important that we just keep reminding ourselves of why this country was founded, that it was founded on creating a space for everyone to be welcomed into. I just feel that, whether you like it or not, there's certain things that I do like about what I'm seeing with the administration in terms of trying to create more efficiencies and trying to create a better way for us to be able to get things done. Because I think when we are over-regulated and there's so much oversight, it prevents us from being able to accomplish anything.
Sure.
And so I'm curious and open-minded to see what's going to unfold over the next few years. And I'm hopefully optimistic. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, like Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle said it in SNL. He's like, I'm hoping you could do the best, And I mean, look, politics aren't really my thing, just because, I mean, this is like a whole other conversation where I think, and I think actually now with social media and with YouTube and with how I think these big media outlets are sort of no longer running the show like they used to, and they used to have dominance and power. And now these big institutions are kind of crumbling, and it's putting it back into the hands of the people, where I've noticed it's like, people, like constantly of like the news now is on YouTube. It's no longer people, like we're talking millions and millions and millions of views, where that used to be CNN, Fox News, or, these, like or MSNBC. Like, I just, I think. Do
you find it hard to find, because I agree with you that more and more news is being found in just these grassroots news outlets and organizations that are popping up. Do you find it difficult to believe what's true? Because I do. It's like it's hard to know what to believe nowadays, and so that's why I try to test it, or I don't just take it on and be like, okay, well that's what it is, and that's why it's hard to. I don't know. I guess it's one of the reasons why I don't necessarily watch the news. I
don't watch the news either. Yeah.
I have my Apple feed, and I've got CNN, I've got Fox News, I've got the Wall Street Journal, I've got New York Times, I've got the Atlantic. I try to catch the headlines of everything out there, and then I think, without going into too much detail, because that's where I think you can get stuck in the weeds. just catching the broad strokes of what these different news outlets are putting out there, and then just trying to have conversations like this with other people, which I don't think people necessarily have anymore. It's more so, this is my opinion, and my opinion is the right opinion. And if you don't believe my opinion, then I don't want you to come over for Thanksgiving dinner. We've just, it's gotten crazy.
You know what? I disagree all the time. All the time. All the time.
That's healthy.
With all my best friends, like all of them, all the time. And I'll be annoying about it. And I'll be like, well, explain to me. Well, and it's interesting because like, it'll also like help me and help my friends formulate what actually because I'll be like, wait, help me understand this. Like, what do you mean? And, and so we'll go in deeper to why this is, or why this is, so one of my best friends, we're both seeking wisdom and truth and of ancient wisdom. So I feel like ancient wisdom is just applicable to every generation that ever has been, so when I think about identities and I think of I think of my higher self is above it all. My higher self is going on this experience of I'm going to be blonde. I mean, I used to be actually totally brunette, but I'm like, you know what? I'm feeling like I want to be blonde now. So, so I feel like I've already preordained whatever this is to have my parents and my sister and this whole
wouldn't you be pissed off if someone told you, no, you cannot go blonde? That's not what we do. That's not part of what our tradition is. Wouldn't you be like, well, why not?
Well, I've never really followed the rules. So I feel like I follow the higher self God rules. It's like, don't be an asshole, like the 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
That's great. I follow the godly rules. So that's who I answer to. I don't answer because rules are just suggestions and society puts them in place. But man, a lot of people make some wacky, fucking Nazi Germany. I just think that a lot of countries can put into place rules and you're like, this is not in accordance to God. This is not the highest value. This is so knowing how kind of sometimes those rules don't make sense, you kind of have to that's kind of how I live my life, but I mean, I generally think this is what I believe is that I do think more and more, I think we are having an awakening. I do think people are wanting to wake up and wanting to play sports teams and wanting to pick a side of what they think is right, and it's totally fair. But I think there can be truth. I think the left and the right and the blue and the red, you need, and Jordan Peterson, I love Jordan Peterson, but he talks about you need both because, the left can go too far and the right can go too far where, the left can end up being a communist country and where it just ends up eating itself, where, people have to literally having signs in the street that say, don't eat people or don't eat the dead, stop eating the dead people because there was no food left. So because the farmers who I guess apparently had more money, who were providing all the food were killed and pillaged. And because they're you have more money. So the people they're providing all the food for an entire country were all raped and killed and pillaged. And so there was no food left because they thought, oh, this needs to be equal, the equality of outcome needs to exist. But there's a lot of people that don't want to work that system. They're like, oh, we could have done it right. But I was like, that was it. We're flawed human beings. So we'll never get to the utopia until we're probably in heaven. And then we're like, we did it. We did this Matrix thing. Oh, it's so fun. It was like a play. Yeah. That's what they say up there. Anyway. And then the right can go too far where it can be fascist and it can be totalitarian and there's too much, order and rules. And so apparently Hitler had a very high disgust level. So his orderliness was on a very extreme level. So if it gets to that, cause it's I'm a deeply compassionate person where, I will help people all the time, but I can't let everyone into my home. I can't, I have my guy James who's been down on his luck, and he's like off the streets, and now he has a place and he has 2 jobs, and like so I've been always like just helping him. But there's only so much I can do because I also have to like pay my bills and my rent, and so it's you can't always like let everybody into your house, and so there's this balancing act of being very empathetic and wanting to help, but then there's a point where it ends up eating itself. And then, it's like, basically, if I let everyone in, then they would destroy the house, and then there's no house left, and then now it's like, yep. So but you can't, you can go too far in either regard. And I think where this whole identity politics, I mean, it is really fascinating and interesting, because it's like, I think when you hold on so tightly to these ideas, and now I'm just wondering, because now I'm just asking the question, is it because you don't know yourself, or beyond like the spiritual realm? Because I mean, Jesus Christ, when I've accidentally had a whole bag of like weed pretzels, I had like 1 weed pretzel, and then I got high, and then I didn't realize that they were weed pretzels, so I like ate the whole bag, and I'm like, God, it was a terrible idea. I was so high. I didn't know if I was a man, if I was a woman, if I was a dog. I was so far up out there that I literally was like in the space of stars and planets, and and I kind of feel like the human consciousness, it is that there is no identity, there is no gender, there is no like, what is this experience? And so I think I was tapping into something, if you believe in any of that, or it's just like, you're just high, and I like call the ambulance, oh my God, I'm dying. And they're like, you're just really high. Because I couldn't even construct a sentence. I'm like, like it was, but I in that moment of having that accidental, of having an accidental like hash attack, I feel like you can explore, like I explored that identity where it's like what Jim Carrey was trying to get across is like, we're this human consciousness existing, and we put these, identities upon ourselves. And like, I also think not playing into identities is just helpful just for the human experience. And it's interesting because it's like these ideas can inform how you understand the world, and storytelling like is a way to understand, like is a through line into the world to make sense of our world, because it can be really complicated. And there's so much that we don't know, because I'm only looking at it from a very like finite point, from my own point of view, sure. And then everyone else has their own viewpoint, Mm-hmm.
With your acting, do you take a spiritual approach to trying to get into understanding your character? What's your, I guess, because we are both thespians, I'm curious about, because I think this discussion started from creating your identity, and how I was talking about going into these auditions and trying to discover, or after analyzing and creating these characters, then focusing that microscope inward to do some of this inner analyzation of who I am and what are my core beliefs. And when you're acting, do you take a spiritual approach to it and build from that way? Or are you more of a outward in, where you put the high heels on and the dress, and then you're like, okay, I've got my character, and now that's going to inform who I am on a deep core level?
Yeah, usually inside out. I mean, sometimes like if you can have some heels, like sometimes like there was an audition for Grace Kelly, Nicole Kidman got it. I mean, I was like, whatever, but it was. You could have played that role in your sleep. What's really funny? I had to go outward in for that, because it was a very well-known person, because she was so specific. I had to find the cadence of her voice, of how she walked and how she existed. I mean, it was wild, because I literally, you don't even recognize myself, but like, obviously that part existed. Like it exists in me, and so I had to, everything was very proper and just very feminine and, and it, like, I'm not doing a great, I mean, this was like 10 years ago, but, cause I have more of the athlete sort of like, like I have a little bit more of a Viking in me. Whereas everything is very, like, it's almost like it is a princess. It is, everything is, and I was wearing a dress and, it's just very, it's just very light and airy and feminine. And so having to put on the heels and this white dress with the hair back and the earrings, and listening to her voice over and over and over again. So, I mean, that sort of like, I can sometimes do voices. So there's sort of like, but I am still going inward. I don't know how to describe it. It's like you're a parrot mimicking, like a character, but you're actually, so when I'm like becoming, like, I don't know how to do it, but I don't know how to describe it. It's sort of like astral projecting when you're like, I wonder what's going on over here. Yeah. Like, you're meditating and then you're like, I wonder what's going on with so-and-so, but then you're literally becoming them. So it's a very spiritual process where even when I'm mimicking, it's not, I'm mimicking, I'm becoming. I'm like, okay, where do I feel it in my body? Where do I, like, you're suddenly constructing, like, I don't know, like it feels, even though I can't, like, I'll go inward and I'll just start asking questions. Like, what about this? What about that? How do you think about this? How do you think about that? But I think, I go inward, and I think I take a spiritual approach to everything in my life, spirituality and my connection to whatever your definition of God is, like source, God. Mine is God, but I'm not. My parents were like basically agnostic or atheist. My mom was recovering Catholic, and I was like, "What's this God business?" And so, like, I had a crush on a boy, and and he would go to church, and I was like, I want to go to church. We're doing this. So I was like 5 or 6, and then we went to like Sunday school, and I was like, I hate this. This is awful. Why did I choose this? I'm not even spending time with him. Like, this is a waste of my time. I hate it. I'm bored.
What didn't you like about it?
It was just boring. I wasn't like, I don't know. They're reading like stories of Sunday school, and they're just like, oh, it just felt like story time, but a really boring one. And I was like, it didn't feel like, at least in the church that we went to, my parents suffered through it. It was very nice. It was very lovely of them.
How long did that crush and the boyfriend last?
Oh, years.
Oh, wow.
It lasted years until he wrote me this lovely, like 5-page letter from summer camp in 8th grade. And it was like, victory is mine. Like, after all those years of pining away for, like, since I was 5, it sort of imprinted. I went him. I looked at a photo. I went him. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, doesn't matter. He's married now. Like, it's funny enough. He came to my father's wake when my father passed. I hadn't seen him in years, and he showed up, and it was very sweet. And I was like, oh my God, David Irwin, what are you doing? Yeah. Anyway, I don't know how we got here, but what we're talking about, so I think going back to like source, spirituality is such, it's how I navigate life, and it's how I like how I make choices, and the higher self, and constantly trying to connect to the divine, to connect to God. God, what do I do in this situation? God, how do I handle this? And when I don't listen to that higher self, that higher voice, I feel like I invoke the chaos, and
do you think God has like a master plan for us?
Yes and no. I think we have free will. I think that's very important. I think the free will aspect. And so what I've been doing, and it says in the Bible to be obedient, and I until I went on a hero's journey of being a very
Susie?
Have you met me? being the contrarian that I am, and being like, I'm going to do it my way. Like, I'm going to learn. Like, you don't know what you're talking about, God. This is just a voice inside my head. Like, and then being like, okay, God, I fucked up. I did listen to you, and I brought the chaos in my life. And what do I do now? And so I kind of feel like now it's a constant conversation that I have with God, whereas before it'd be very sporadic, or it'd be like through meditation. I mean, like that's like a version of prayer. But yeah, I think like just having that conversation and bringing that to all the aspects of my life, I think is so important, because when you're inviting God in, I mean, like God's always there regardless, but I just think like when God's on the team, then it's a way better ride, and a way like healthier ride. And it just, you're just making like more high value, better choices. And I just think like, yeah, God knows everything. So it's like, there's so much you can't foresee. So it's like when I'm like, trying to, like handle a situation or whatever, I'm like, how do I handle this? What do I do? And God's like, okay, da, 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 da. And it's always through love. It's always through the highest good. But yeah, I think through acting, certain characters, if I'm playing like a real person, like how do they walk? So there's sort of like a dual thing happening of like, going outward, inward, but then also trying to dial that in and be like, break down the script and be like the choices that were made, and also the inside thoughts, like what is this character thinking, constantly, like what was the makeup, like what are the triggers, what are like any other human being, like what are their triggers, like what triggers them, what's their trauma, what is, what turns them on, like what is exciting, what like lights like their soul on fire.
Where did you train for acting?
Duke University, and Warner Laughlin, who's great. She does a lot of story, but I kind of like have come up with this like on my own. Just I study like just a lot of psychology, so I'm always like, I'm like, okay, how do you relate this to life? Like this is the same, when I'm learning about psychology and all, like you're just recreating life, and so you're recreating like a version of you existing in the world, and having to construct like everything. And so sometimes it can be just very intuitive, and it's just, if you're doing like a rom-com, then it's like really like it's easy. Okay, well, hold on. How was the experience? I want to, there's a few things that I do want to talk about. There's like so much ground I want to cover.
No, you talk. You talk.
No. Okay. You did an epic rom-com that I just, oh my God, Something Borrowed. It's so good with Kate Hudson and John Krasinski. Like it was so much fun to watch, and it's like so much fun to go on that ride. And I feel like that was such a relatable comedy in so many ways, where, the girl who just didn't have this, oh God, it's so good. It's just so like, it's so iconic. Like it really, I mean, what was that experience like? What was the casting? How did that happen? Cause you were the main guy. You were the guy.
Well, I was Dex. And I was in the middle of all of the drama, and I would say I think what really resonated with people about that movie was that it's the anti-romantic comedy, romantic comedy, where there is, the guy and the girl do end up together, but there's a bitter sweetness and there's a reality to that story where it's not just all sunbeams and roses, and that there are consequences to people getting hurt in relationships and the mistakes that we can make. And it was interesting when we shot that movie, we did a test screening down in San Diego before the movie came out. So, for people who may not know, when a movie is made and they've put all this money into it, they want to get a pre-screening opinion from audiences to just hear the reaction. They do a score on each of the characters, and they ask questions about, did you like the story? Did you like the theme? Da, da, da. And so one of the producers asked me to come down there, and I went down, and I'm sitting in the back of the movie theater. There's probably like maybe 20 people in just the front of the audience, front of the theater watching the movie. And at the very end, they had a moderator come out and just start asking some of these questions. And because my character is someone who was in love with this girl from law school, and she even says it herself, I didn't think someone like you would be interested in someone like me. And I, on a deep, this is where, I feel like on a spiritual level in these soulmates, I think Dex and Rachel were soulmates. And on the surface, I think we can allow our looks or our status get in the way of truly recognizing the truth of whether or not these people should be together or not. And so, as everyone probably knows from the movie, I go on a date with Rachel, and then of course Darcy shows up. And because Rachel and Dex are still trying to navigate if there's something there, and because Darcy is so assertive and she's got all this energy and she just has this whirlwind of like charisma, it's hard not to get swooped up in that energy of like, wow, this is incredible and this is amazing. But deep down, I think this is where we find ourselves in situations where we end up in relationships or in a job where it may have looked good on paper, but when we have those moments of quiet solitude, we recognize that maybe this isn't really the right thing. And the scene that I really liked, one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when I asked my father, when I recognized that maybe I'm engaged to Darcy. It's a few years after me and Rachel have met, and Darcy and I are about to get married. And I'm just having these second thoughts about whether or not this is the right thing after Rachel has told me, well, of course, you knew I was in love with you in law school. And I was like, record scratch. What? And so, of course, I end up going home with Rachel that night. We let our emotions get the best of us. And then we wake up and realize, oh, crap, we made this big mistake. We've got to go back to playing the roles that we've said we are meant to play. And then I asked my dad, have you ever gone down a road and wondered whether or not it was the right path? And he cuts me off and says, son, that's not who we are. And I can't remember the exact dialogue, but it was essentially him shutting me down saying, this is what you chose. You got to fulfill on it. And so part of the audience at that test screening empathized with Dex. And when he was asking questions, what do you think about Darcy? What do you think about Rachel? Half the audience was like, oh, I can understand that Dex and Rachel, they were meant to be and true love prevails and it's a beautiful love story. And half the audience was like, Dex is an asshole. He's a cheater. He cheated on his fiance and he's not redeemable. And I mean, you can kind of see both sides of it. But that was what was really interesting about that movie is that, at the heart of it was this really, realistic, heartfelt story of do you go and live the roles that you think you're supposed to, or do you have to put the brakes on and have to then deal with the backlash and the blowback of what those life choices are going to be? Because life, making that decision at 30 years old, you want to spend the rest of your life trying to play that role. And I think we all know how that ends up. And that's why 50% of marriages end in divorce, because they have everyone has good intentions when they go into something. But until you really know someone and know them deeply and intimately, on a spiritual level where you feel safe and seen and heard, like I think Dex and Rachel really had that type of relationship. I think it's a lesson in, yes, it's important to honor your agreements and honor your word. And I'm not saying what Dex did was the right way of going about it, but I think it was a really interesting story in the sense that it was realistic and it helped create some conversation around this. And it was just, it was an incredibly fun movie to shoot. I mean, come on, I was fresh off a soap opera and the reboot of Melrose Place. And I really was like, I was on set and I'm like, holy shit, I can't believe I'm here. That's fucking Kate Hudson.
Yeah, so, you were the star.
It was amazing.
How are your scenes? How are your scenes together? What was that?
I mean, that was,
Like, did you guys have so much fun? Like, what was your style? Did you guys become close? Like,
I would say it was such a, like on a movie set where you're showing up on set, you're doing your rehearsals, you're moving, so it wasn't like we had a whole lot of time after we're, in between scenes or after work to be like, hey guys, let's go to the White Horse Tavern and hang out. I mean, I just
love White Horse Tavern. Were you filming in New York? You were filming in New York, right?
Yeah. And our first day of rehearsals, it was actually Kate's birthday. And that day she invited me to her birthday party out in Brooklyn. So went out to Brooklyn, and Billy Crudup was there. So got to meet him. And I was like, wow, I'm like, this is pretty cool. I'm now being invited into this person's world who's grown up in the world of Hollywood. Yeah. And having not grown up in the world of Hollywood, it was exciting. It was really cool. I was nervous as hell. And I worked with Larry Moss, a really great acting teacher.
I love Larry Moss. He's amazing. No, but I bought his book, and I was kind of I think I went to some Larry Moss classes and worked with like his other people or something. Yeah. And like in the beginning when I first he's phenomenal. He's amazing.
He goes deep. He goes really deep. So he helped me get really prepared for that character and feel confident enough to show up on set. And this is where I think the reason why we do get nervous in life is when we feel like we aren't prepared or we have that imposter syndrome. And I had all of that going on when I was like showing up on set. But what was great about it was having the experience of being able to watch Kate Hudson in action, where she's just so free and she improvs. And I just learned a lot working with her, and she's just a force of nature, and her comedic timing is genius.
What were the takeaways like of working with her? What was did she give you any good advice? And like, what did you learn the most?
Don't think it out. Don't try to rehearse it too much. Just roll those cameras and and what would your character be doing in the moment? We were doing the dance scene, and there was a moment where Rachel does the splits, and she's like, I think I sprained my vagina. And Kate runs over there first, and she's got her glass of champagne, and there was a couple dancing next to us, just basically randomly placed on the dance floor with us. And Kate is going to go over there and has to help Rachel up. And the couple that was right next to her, of course, they have no idea what Kate is going to do. And so Kate told me she was just, because I asked her, I said, because we had our drinks, and I was like, well, how are you going to, do you want me to hold on to your champagne while you go over there? And she goes, no, I'm just going to give it to this couple over here. And I'm like, okay.
That's hilarious. That's amazing.
And so I turned to the character, couple,
you mean?
As the character. And I turned to the couple and I go, hey, by the way, Kate's going to give you her champagne as she goes over to Darcy or over to Rachel. And Kate goes, why did you tell them that? And I go, well, so they knew that you were going to give it. She's like, would they know they were going to be getting it in real life? And I was like, no, they wouldn't. You're right. And so she's all about trying to capture these real moments on camera. And that's when I was like, okay, I've got a lot to learn here. But just watching her in action, and even John Krasinski and Steve Howie watching, I mean, oh man.
I know Steve. Steve's great.
The outtakes of...
But they're so fucking funny.
Oh,
they're so funny in the movie. I cannot. Yeah. Wait, tell me, how was that experience? Because they're so funny.
You should see the stuff that's on the cutting room floor that you can only take one version of a joke, and the 20 other versions where you'd all be sitting behind the monitors just trying to hold in your laughter because you can't laugh because obviously it's going to be picked up on the soundtrack. And so, but we were literally peeing our pants watching them just improv. And what was great about our director, Luke Greenfield, was that he was just like, yeah, just, go ahead, do it again.
I know Luke Greenfield. Yeah. I think we follow each other on Instagram. He's great.
He's a great guy. Yeah. And so, I guess my biggest takeaway was just trust the process, trust yourself. I'd done a lot of work to get prepared and to be ready to get on that set. And Luke was really great too, because in the audition, we were doing a chemistry read, and it was between me and another guy for Dex. And
can you name who? Or do you remember?
Matt Balmer.
Love Matt Balmer. Oh my God. This makes
From
sense.
White Collar.
Yeah.
And
yeah, of
here's
course.
the thing. He had his show, he's a good looking guy.
Yeah.
And I was still relatively new. And so I went for that final audition, and my agent said, "You're auditioning against one other guy." And I'm like, "Don't tell me. I don't want to know who. I don't want to get in my head." Because
exactly.
when I was early in my career, I'd go into auditions. I'd be like, "Holy crap, there's the guy from that show and that guy from that movie." I'm like, "Why am I here? Why would they even think of putting me in this movie?" And so I go to the Warner Brothers lot for that final chemistry read. And we were going to be doing, both he and I were doing the chemistry read with Jennifer. And I'm walking up the steps to get up to the casting. And as I'm walking up, there comes Matt with that charming smile. And he's like, "How you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, fuck. That's the guy I'm auditioning against." And he looked pretty damn confident and happy walking out of that audition. Shit. So, but then again, this is where we have to just not compare
you were the character
to other people.
You were hold on. This is kind of the character, because what you said in the very beginning of our conversation literally is the same thing. So you were meant to play this character because you were trying to live up to this, like, idea of whatever, identities and everything. And I think that, you had to kind of take a wrecking ball to all of that and, fall into modeling and then acting and everything else. And then you were able to kind of, discover more about yourself and life and humanity. And so I think that it's not lost on me that you are playing a character literally that, like, I love that film so much. And it's such a classic rom-com that I like grew up on and I love. But like, it's not lost on me that like you were definitely embodying that in life and then on film and then literally having to make a decision of forging out that pathway of like, well, what do I want? What does Colin want? It's the same sort of, not like, kind of like the Notebook, like not about what your parents want or what you want or whatever. What do you want? Damn it, what do you want?
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that. I'm not sure you may have heard this before, but what I really liked, I heard this from one of my acting teachers. I can't remember. They said, your job is to go into that room and bring the best representation of that character. And it's not the casting director or the director or the producers that's going to be choosing you, Colin, for that role. Mm-hmm. It is the character that is going to choose you for that role. If you are meant to play that role, if you have fully embodied and if you resonate with the frequency and the energy of the essence of that character, it's not that the casting director and the producers pick you. It's that they recognize that the character has chosen you in a sense that you are just it. And that they're just basically saying, yep, that's it. They're not saying, I want Colin. It's saying, that was Dex. And so this is where we've got
it's a vibrational match. It's a vibrational match. It's the energy of the vibration. It's like there's a discord or there's like universe speaks in frequencies. At least that's how I understand it. And so it was a frequency match.
And this is where I started to learn about, I don't need to show up as Colin per se in anything and everything that I do, because who is Colin? Like, Colin is a dude from South Side of Chicago who likes sports and, loves mountain biking, whatever. But what I try to use as a guidepost or my North Star for how to live life is much like what I just mentioned with, what would Dex do in this situation? What would Dex say? And so what I do is, whenever I'm in a situation where I need some courage, I say, well, what would courage do in this situation? Or what would patience do in this situation? So you start to ask the question, what do I need to be lived by to be able to show up, to be able to fulfill on being the best mom or dad or brother or sister or uncle? And it's not necessarily you or your ego. It helps you kind of put that off to the side a little bit, where you can have your ego and you got to have your ego. You got to have that personality and your unique Susieisms and your
the ego is there to protect. Well, it's also there for protection, is kind of what I figured out. Because if you're egoless, then you have no wants, you have no needs, and then you're just sort of free, like you're Buddha. You're Buddha. You've arrived. You know what I mean? You've ascended. But like we are in this material world,
right? And
it is really interesting. So it's like it's a constant balancing act between the ego and the higher self, and that's always like a challenge, of being like, okay, I'm in the matrix right now, but I'm also my higher self. So it's like always having one foot in like the matrix world, but I'm trying to figure out how to do that well, because it isn't always easy, because I can just go up here and just be fully like, meditation and oneness. And then you come back here and it feels like, oh God, it feels very, like I'm back in the matrix. I'm in New York City. Oh my God, there's a hustle and bustle. And, like, carry my mace everywhere just in case somebody attacks me. Like that's like ego.
Have you recognized that acting has allowed you to practice non-attachment? Because I've found when I've tried to go into an audition and show them, or like, I want to make sure that I've got to cry here and I've got to laugh at this point and I've got to yell on this line. When I feel like, when I was early on in my career, I would create these beats and these moments. This is where I got to cry, and this is where where I was so focused on the outcome, and where I was attached to, I want to do a good job. I want to make sure they, liked me, and I want to make sure my agent. And as I started to move through this acting journey, I started to realize, taking more of a Zen approach, where you do the work, you show up prepared, and then you do all the work, the analysis on the paper, and then you rip up the paper and burn it, whatever. And then you walk into the room with non-attachment to that work, trusting that it's there and it will show up in whatever moment, that from moment to moment is needed for that part of you to show up to fulfill on what is needed in that moment. And that's the hard part of all of this, because I think we all have an attachment to looking good and wanting to make a good impression. And we're so worried about how we sound. And we get so attached to the outcome that it prevents us from just being in the moment, of just being ourselves. And that, I think, is the biggest thing I learned from Kate Hudson from doing that movie. Was she would show up on set and she was just like, all right, let's play. And it was like, wait. And Luke would be like, all right, let's do this and let's have this. And she'd be like, wait a minute, let's just do a rehearsal and see what happens. And so it was really interesting to see how someone at her level.
Let's do a rehearsal and see what happens.
Let's just find out. Do I want to sit? I don't know. Maybe Darcy wants to stand. I don't know until we do it. So it was. Really,
I love her. I'm living for her in her music career. Who knew? Who knew? She's incredible. Wow. Her, like, she's, I had no idea she was that talented as a musician as well. So talented.
Yeah. Yep. So that was great. And with Hollywood, everyone's like, well, are you guys all friends, Julie? And I've had Ginny on my podcast, and, and it's hard because you meet so many people in this business, and it's like we only have so many hours in the day to really nurture the relationships in our lives that are really, I feel like, support us and resonate with us. And, but it's, it's exciting to just be around that energy and that, on those kinds of sets where, you're showing up to tell a really cool story and people believe in it and are inspired by it. And that's why I think what makes great leadership and a great director is someone who is able to convey and articulate the vision for the story and the script, where people are like, yeah, that's what this is about. And so no matter who you are, whether you are the caterer or the wardrobe or the transportation or the actors or the camera department, when you all show up, even though you all have your own particular specific role in putting all this together, if each of these different departments aren't showing up and are inspired by that singular vision of telling this story, that's when you've got chaos. And this is where I talk about when I do some corporate consulting where I go to corporations and I actually speak to, I do these workshops where I bring a Hollywood storytelling approach to how do you run your company and how is this organization, how is what is the theme of this organization or this company? What is your mission? What is your vision? And approach it from the storytelling aspect of a director and a producer for the CEO and the C-suite, and then for middle level management and employees, saying that each and every one of you, just because you are an employee doesn't mean you're not as important as the C level. It's that every person that shows up on that movie set is integral in telling that story, and that there are no small parts, there are only small actors. And so those little like anecdotes that help companies and leaders and presidents, CEOs of these corporations start to understand that they really are telling a story with running a company or an organization. So that's what's been really exciting about all of this, is bringing a lot of the stuff that I've learned from acting classes and being on these sets to corporations. And now I do some speaking at organizations and companies, and I do my own retreats. I'm doing a retreat here in Scottsdale, April 3rd through the 7th. It's a health and wellness retreat where I've got yoga and sound bowl healing. I bring in all these different experts in their fields to talk about all this stuff. And I've got horseback riding. We're doing a hike in the Arizona mountains. We're going to my buddy's health spa that has red light therapy and PEMF mats and grounding stuff and all these newer ways of approaching health and wellness, just to help us all just start to, help us navigate this crazy world of health and wellness. Because you turn on one podcast and they say that seed oils are bad for you. You turn on another podcast and they say, oh no, they're fine for you. It's the glyphosate on the pesticides. That's what it's the problem. That's why all these cancers are it's like, what do you believe? It's crazy.
Yeah, no, I literally, there was a joke that I would use, even in 2015, I'd be like, kale's good for you. Oh, news, kale's bad for you. Oh, no, it's good
got
again.
oxalates.
Oh,
it causes arthritis and kidney stones. And it's like, okay, so then I'm not going to eat kale.
Yeah. So, okay. So you've been on a health and wellness, and I know we have to wrap up in a little bit, but you have gone on, this is the third time that you've had cancer. So and you're healing and, you're on the healing journey. So I prefer to use the term on the healing journey, and because I do think words matter. That's
why they call it spelling, by the way.
Because it's it's magic. I'm telling you, prayers. Do you know in law, which is really interesting, I think this is also translates for so-called magic, apparently, is that it's the power of threes. And also in law, they'll send you 3 notices or something. They'll do things 3 times. So there's literally in law, it very much relates to
even
I haven't really
the banking system, like a bank. Yeah. It's like what they call money currency. Currency is essentially the current of a river, and what holds the current of the river in the formation of it. It's the bank. It's the river bank that controls the flow of the currency, and that's why they say, "Are you liquid?" when it comes to money, because money, in the sense that it is a liquid movement of something. And so when we talk about money,
it's energy.
And so it's these banks. You are a bank. I'm a bank. Banks are banks. But sometimes we get into this perspective of, I've got to lock it up and shut it down and protect it. And then you're stopping the flow of energy, which is not what it's meant to do.
You're kind of blowing my mind right now. Okay, yeah. Even, if we're getting putting our tinfoil hats on, the whole passport birth certificate thing of like, you're this, oh God, this is getting into how I've heard it before. The theory is that when you're coming out of the womb and you're separated from your umbilical cord and what's it called? The placenta. When you're separated from that, you are now like a broken entity. You're a shipwreck. And so when you're like this broken entity, you need the government to come in and take care of you. And so you're giving essentially your power away to like the government because you can't govern yourself. So if you're whole, like, and you're like, I guess you're apparently, there's something that I'm not quite making the connection. Like I don't have like I don't fully completely understand it, but there's something to the placenta, how I've heard it, and separating that, and how the birth certificate came into play, and how it was like you're this broken entity, and how they want to come in and then they own you, and then you're sort of this debt that they can like own and like, wield and, control, and you're this, kind of like the Matrix where you're these batteries. I mean, I'm not explaining this probably very well. And I know Christy, who's going to edit this, is going to be like, what are you even saying?
And ask Neo about all of this and Morpheus.
Yeah. But basically like the whole, I think the something with the birth certificate, and I've heard this over and over and over. I think it was actually on a TV show where it was like full conspiracy, like full tinfoil hat, but there's something where if you are giving your power away, then you're in debt, and then you're constantly like being controlled because you don't realize your own divine, innate power of accessing God. And I think that's a theory that, these people who are running the world want us to not realize that we have the power within ourselves, and that we have, our
dependent on,
and so in the outside source, if you're depending your wellness, your everything outside of yourself, then you're always being like, you can take care of me. And then they're like, yes, I will take care of you and make you sick and keep you. So it's like kind of the devouring mother where, it's just like keeping you there in a gingerbread house and then I'm going to eat you. So, I think it's always like going back to the self. And I think that's why it's like my connection with God. It's like, okay, those are your rules, or those are your things. Like that has nothing to do with me, and always being like, I am of God. I am like, we're all of God. And I think the more that we could remember that, then I think like the world would be a better place. But okay, anyway, because then we know the power isn't outside of ourselves, and I think that's always like remembering that, for just myself constantly of like, sometimes what you're saying about the external validation of going into an audition and being like, do you like me? Do you like me? Do you like me? Like there's, and not having like, just being like, what do I like want to do with this character? How do I feel inspired? It's sort of the Rick Rubin take of like, what inspires me? Like what I want to say with this character, how do I relate to this character? Do I feel inspired? And if I don't feel inspired by the writing and I'm just like, oh dear God, nope. I'm like, no. Okay. So your health and wellness journey. So what have you learned? Okay. This is also a theory that every time something really terrible happens, you get huge downloads of information and wisdom. And if you use it correctly, so it's like Joe Dispenza, like you can kind of like his belief that you can heal yourself because, and I believe that, and I think what he talks about with people like accessing the divine, and you have to become a completely different person. Like you have to think different thoughts. You have to, and I think in terms of like, I guess, health and wellness, it's like healing yourself is, having to like, if you have autoimmune problems, and I've talked about this with my best friend, that it's like, well, what was she saying to herself? What was the internal dialogue and how did she change that? And so then the spiritual component of like of autoimmune problems is you're attacking, like basically is your body's attacking itself. So then it's like, well, what are you saying inside your like, how is that mirroring your body? And so like she was able to heal all that and completely orient herself properly, completely heal, like with no outside sources, and sort of go internally. And so Joe Dispenza talks about this, about you have to completely change the way that you think, because our lives are built on patterns, that if you're getting a certain result, you have to change those patterns. And so whether that's like the food, or that's like, you know, the TV and the news that we're watching, because sometimes like I'm like, oh my God, I think sometimes the information that we're seeing on the television is just so terrible. And I'm like,
toxic.
It's so toxic. It's more toxic than the food half the time, because it's so stress inducing. And so it's like raising your cortisol levels. So it's like, and then it lowers your immune system to protect like against. So what has been the takeaways? Because I know we even got into the, you know, like the ivermectin of it all, of like cancer. And sometimes like a lot of like what I've been seeing on my algorithm is, you know, parasites have a lot to do with it. Mold has a lot to do with it. And, you know, a lot of people, what was the methylene blue, and people are, you know, we talked about the organic black seed oil that I just bought, and like like I have literally like a whole thing of, you know, like vitamins. Oh my God. Yeah. So what is the thing that you're doing?
So it was funny. You just mentioned Joe Dispenza. I was looking down on my phone here because I have his book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And this is I have it on audiobook, and a lot of what has been helping me through all of this health and wellness journey is not letting cancer define who I am. And when I was first diagnosed in 2006 with testicular cancer, I was working on all my children at the time. I was 6 months into my 3-year contract. And it was the most exciting time of my life, but also the most scary, because I was like, oh my God, I've been working and trying to get on, create an acting career. And it was the first time I had a professional contract for acting that was longer than just like a few weeks. And so I was on top of the world. And then it's like source, God, universe, whatever, has a funny way of presenting things to you, I believe, when you need them, to remind you of who you are. And so I was diagnosed with this testicular cancer. And it's weird how when people say, or when a doctor sits down in front of you and says, you have cancer, I'm scheduling you for surgery on Monday. This needs to come out now. This is an advanced stage. I mean, the myriad of thoughts and fear and like denial. Like, what do you mean cancer? I feel fine. I look fine. I'm on a soap opera. I'm my shirt's off with all these beautiful ladies. And like, this isn't real. Like, this can't be real. And so there's that part of the denial. And after, seeing the results and whatever, my doctor just said, listen, Colin, you can do whatever you want, but this is the reality of it. And this is where I feel like it's really important for us to face the reality of tough situations in life. And you can deny that gravity exists. If you jump off a building, you're going to fall. So I had to do some deep inner work of, okay, do I want to experience myself as fearful and afraid and nervous and disempowered through this experience? Or what I started to think about, well, what would like a character that I've played do? How would they approach this? And what would Maximus from Gladiator do in this moment right now? And that was my in for starting to take on some of the persona of what I needed to be in order to move through this fucking scary experience. And so I did the surgery, had radiation treatment, and was going for my checkups every 3 months. And every time I would go to Sloan Kettering Hospital, I would just stand in front of the hospital, and on the street, I was just like channeling Maximus from Gladiator. And I was just like, are you not entertained? And just trying to take on the essence. And what we do as actors is to create the character that we need to create and take on to be able to walk into these rooms to audition. I started to realize that I can use the same technique in order to be able to create the character I needed to be able to go in there and get poked and prodded and lit up with all this radiation. And what I would write in my calendar for all of my checkups was good health appointment. And I'm going to confirm that I am healthy. So I said that I was healthy. I, like Joe Dispenza, creating the reality and present tensing the future. So they call that quantum jumping. So you're essentially setting a certain reality in the future. And this, I learned actually this from another
quantum jumping. Oh my God. Wait. So this is merging. This is what I talk about all the time, where it's like you're merging current you with future you. And like how, like you're going to a different timeline. I love it.
Yeah. And so what my acting coach had me do before I went in for the audition of Something Borrowed was she said, write your Academy Award winning speech as if you were delivering this 20 years from now. And it all starts with you having already done the movie Something Borrowed. Now, this is before I got cast in the movie.
Hold on. Back up. Say this again.
So before I went for that final audition for Something Borrowed, one of my acting teachers, because I was like, I am so freaking nervous. Like, it wasn't like I was afraid of the audition per se. I was afraid of getting this, because then once you get the job, then you're like, oh shit, now I got to do this. And part of me was like nervous about whether or not I would actually be able to perform at that level. And so my acting teacher said, Colin, do you believe you're an Academy Award winning actor? And I was like, what? I mean, I don't know. Like, Academy Award, I've only been doing this for 8 years, I don't. And she said, that's why you're going to fail. That's why you're not booking these other roles. It's because it doesn't matter whether or not you win the Academy Award. You got to believe you're an Academy Award winning actor in order to give yourself that fighting chance. Because when you walk into a room, you communicate more energetically to the people in that room than the words that come out of your mouth. So you have to walk into that room as an Academy Award winning actor in order for them to and even feel that you deserve that role. And most of the time, what I realized was I was showing up in life, doubting myself, questioning myself. I'm Colin. I don't belong at this party. I don't do this. I walk into a party. Who's that? Are they going to like me? No, you walk into the room.
Act like you've been there before.
The energy of who is that? I want to find out who that is. I am curious about what you do, and I'm going to find out what you need so that when I find someone else who has it, I'm going to connect you to. And now I create value everywhere I go, even though I may not have any money in my pocket. I may not be the best looking or the smartest person. What matters most in life is the value that you bring to others. And so this acting teacher of mine, she really impressed upon me the belief that I was this Academy Award winning actor. And she said, write out your Academy Award winning speech. So I went home and I wrote, I just want to thank the Academy. I want to thank Kate for, a great performance. We had great chemistry, and Jennifer Goodwin and all, I wrote out this letter to the Academy. And so that way, when I went in for that last audition, subconsciously, I already knew that I had the role. And now I was just showing up to fulfill on my destiny that I had already created. And so when we start to do this, we inform our subconscious, because it's our subconscious that needs to be reminded of who we are. We may intellectually know who we are and choose to be who we are, but this is where you got to do your deep work and your meditation, and even your subconscious eavesdrops on everything you say. So even when you say, oh, I'm so stupid, or oh, I'm an idiot, or your subconscious is like that 6-year-old part of yourself that is constantly listening. That is constant. And if you're feeding it negativity and self-doubt, your little 6-year-old version of yourself is sitting there listening and like, oh, I guess I'm an idiot. I guess I'm stupid. I guess I'm ugly. I guess I'm not good enough. I don't have Gucci, and I don't have I don't have this role. And so I guess I'm not, and it's all made up. And so you got to nurture that inner 6-year-old version of yourself, which is your subconscious. So showing up impeccably every day. And I'm human, so I don't always hit the mark, but this has been the framework that has allowed me to be able to show up in life. And when I hear people saying, oh my God, it's nice to meet you, Colin. It's so amazing. And I'm like, oh, it's nice to meet you too. What do you do? Oh, I'm just a nurse, or I'm just an accountant. I go, whoa. You are not just anything. You are an accountant, or you are a nurse. And what you do is you take care of people, or you provide safety and security for people on a deep level. This is your purpose. And do not discredit or discount who you are, because when you show up in life constantly feeding yourself this negativity, energetically, that's what you communicate to other people. So this is where, if you really want to have a great relationship, you got to honor yourself and nurture yourself so that when you show up for that other person, their subconscious and their soul can recognize that you are a fully integrated person, mind, body, and spirit, and that you may not always be perfect. You may not always hit the mark, but you are willing to show up and be connected to that deeper soul purpose part of who you are. And this is the work that I do with my clients and when I do my courses and at my retreats. So I think you should come to my retreat so that we can have more of these conversations. And this is the real work that has helped me get to where I am at, because as Tony Robbins says, I've constructed this version of myself. This didn't just happen by happenstance. And I guess the cancer that, I guess, long answer to your question, the cancer really was the impetus that made me have to do this work, because I think a lot of people don't have to face these difficult realities in life, whether it's a blessing or whatever you want to call it. It is what it is.
It can be a blessing, because here's the thing, like, I mean, my God, losing everything in a fire, losing both my parents, like having just so much death in my family, and being like, okay, well, I can't control any of this, but like, how can I wield this energy? How is this an opportunity? And when you frame it that way, which is kind of similarly, like, I think that's why, like, immediately we're like, oh my God, we totally got along. And like, I feel like you totally are framing it in that way of where there is an opportunity, an invitation of discovery, and like finding the wisdom and the takeaways of how can I be a better person in this, how can I, manifest like really great health, like not just because, health is, I feel like there's a spiritual component, there's the emotional component, but you're trying to be like, okay, I'm going to clean up all the areas of my life, because health is not just the food we eat and like, it's the TV that we watch. It's, it's everything else. And it's a mind, body, soul connection, spirit. And, it's, like there's always like within the darkness with like the really tough challenges or trauma, like I always find that there's these huge pops of energy where you just get incredible downloads where you wouldn't get otherwise, because everything's going well. Like you're not pushed forward to grow, do you believe in that?
I absolutely. And I believe that this cancer experience has further provided the opportunity for me to practice non-attachment and believing that who I am is this spiritual being that is on this journey, this path, and that I'm only going to be in this body for a certain amount of years. We're all going to be just these are just our vessels that we are allowing us to move through this life, and eventually they're going to break down at some point. It's what it comes down to is, you can't control the things that happen in your life. The only thing you can control is the meaning that you attach to everything that happens to your life. And so I always look forward, again, quantum jumping, and then imagining myself 80, whatever years old on the porch swing, looking back and saying, how proud of myself do I want to be in that experience? How do I want to have walked through life? How do I want to have treated people? How do I want to have left my mark in terms of the purpose that I've and the impact that I've made on this world? Not from, look at me. I think we all have that ego part of us, and especially as actors, we have that deep-seated need to be seen and heard. But this is where it's important to reconnect to the authentic version of who you are, which has nothing to do with the ego or the how you look or how smart you are. It really comes down to who you choose to be in the face of all of this. And the three core things that I choose to be lived by are inspiration, self-expression, and boldness. Those are my three North Stars. So I always ask, before I jump on a podcast, before I take a meeting, before I write an email, what would inspiration write? How would inspiration show up? What would self-expression do? Because as someone, I'm a natural introvert, so my natural physiological way of being is to hide, to run, to shut down, to hyperventilate when the camera is on me. But when I show up as that, I am that physical experience of introvert. But when I identify and surrender to self-expression, I can have this amazing conversation with you, not worried about how it's going to go, but just listening to you and doing the work. Because I think you can tell I've read a lot. I've done a lot of work myself, therapy and coaching. And I feel like I've finally gotten to a place in my life where I obviously don't have everything figured out, but I feel like I've got a strong foundation because I've chosen who I am in this life instead of letting life dictate or tell me who I am.
Okay. So last two questions. So do you think, I think we spoke earlier over Zoom, and so you think that the exposure to 9/11, because you were literally living right across the street, is what happened? Because a lot of people were affected by the chemicals and so they were looking in your place for a fuselage, or how did that?
Yeah, so I was living directly across the street from the World Trade Center, separated by the West Side Highway on the 18th floor. So from my window, you could see directly at the World Trade Center. And that morning I woke up and heard the sirens and went to my window, and I saw, normally there's traffic at 8 o'clock in the morning on the West Side Highway, and there was no traffic. There was only
no one there.
Fire trucks, police cars, and ambulances. And all these firemen going into the building and police officers. And I was like, what is going on? And then I started seeing debris hit the street. And I was like, where's that coming from? And, I had to get down and look up because I was that close to the World Trade Center and saw people hanging out of the windows, saw the smoke coming out the south side of the North Tower. And because the plane had hit the north side of the tower and it blew out the south side. So what I could see was the smoke and the flames coming out the backside. And then I was like, why are those people up at the top? Why aren't they what are they doing? Are they just watching what's going on? Little did we know that they were trapped. And then after a few minutes, I grabbed my video camera and I started videotaping, and I'm like, this is so weird. And I turned on the TV, it said, plane hit the World Trade Center, and I'm thinking a student Cessna. My brother's a pilot, and he had to do all these pilot lessons, and it's like maybe some plane just went off course. And then all of a sudden, on the video camera, you can hear boom, and I'm like, oh my god!
Did you see it? Did you film the second plane hit the tower?
Yeah. So I've got footage of that, and then I was on the phone with my friend who had called me, and she was like, "Are you all right? Are you watching this?" And I'm on the phone with her and videotaping, and on the camera, you can hear me screaming. I'm like, oh my God, Lise, it's another one. It's another one. And she's like, are you all right? I'm like, and you can hear my voice go eerily calm. I'm just like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm getting out of here. And I turned the video camera off. I shut the window, and then I went down 18 flights of stairs. That's when I knew something was not right. So I ran outside. I was standing outside of my apartment, and there was a group of people. We were all just standing there watching, and then we started seeing people jumping out, and that was just horrendous. And it got to a point where I couldn't watch it anymore. So and at that point, no one had any idea that those towers were going to fall down. I mean, they were so massive. So I just started walking up the street, went into a deli to grab some water, and all of a sudden, the lights went out. The ground started shaking. It was like an avalanche sound. It was like freight train. And I run outside, and people were screaming and running down the street. So I started running down the street.
Oh my God!
And I'm like, what the? And I look, and there's the gray cloud coming at us. And so I just kept running. And got up.
You were in the cloud? You didn't have a bag of stuff. You didn't have anything. Like, you were like, I'm going to grab some food and then I'll, go figure out what to do.
Yeah. I went into the deli to grab some water. I mean, it was like 80 to 75 degrees that morning. And the cloud didn't get me. I saw it coming. So a bunch of us just started running down up the West Side Highway. And then we finally got up to Houston Street, and we heard a noise, and we turned around, and I watched the second tower just fall right in front of my eyes. And at that point, I was just like, I felt fine. I was like, man, this is really effed up. And I went to a buddy of mine's place, and my girlfriend at the time, she had left and gone into the World Trade Center to go to work. And so I didn't know if she was alive. And so I went to where she worked, and she was there, and I was like, oh my God, thank God you're alive.
Oh God.
We stayed at a friend of mine's place in Union Square, and then it was a few days before we could get back to my apartment, and a National Guard soldier walked us up with a flashlight because all the lights were out, and the FBI had broken down my door, and there was a bolt on my door, and the National Guard soldier undid the deadbolt, and he said the FBI had broken down the door to everyone's apartment that faced the World Trade Center, because our windows had gotten blown in, and they were looking for the black boxes of the airplanes. Because when the towers fell, they mushroomed out and just sprayed all the buildings around. So they were looking in my apartment for the black box. And National Guard soldier opens up the door. We walk in, and it looked like a bomb had blown up inside of my apartment. Debris and glass and metal beams and carpet and financial documents. And he said, you have 10 minutes to put whatever you can put into a suitcase, and you got to get out of there. And so, we had surgical masks on, but the stench and the smell and just the dust everywhere, we grabbed clothes and we got out of there. And then
were the clothes contaminated? Like, was your stuff contaminated with because it's like when the fires happen, the houses that survived, I was actually, I think, lucky that I lost everything, because trying to clean it and fix it or whatever is like, at least for a fire, but also in this situation, it's a similar situation. How did you, was anything salvageable? Did you have to throw everything out?
I threw out my rug. I threw out, I would say, I didn't throw out my bedding, but a lot of that debris and dust. I couldn't move back into my apartment, so I went back to Chicago for a good probably couple of months. But on my way from Manhattan,
did you have to pay rent, or was the building just like, no, you can't? No, they were just like, okay,
you got to move out. So I had this one suitcase, and I went to this hotel, and I was just sitting on the floor, trying to absorb everything that just had happened. And I'm like, this is what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? Where am I going to live? I'm grateful to be alive, but what do I do now? Where do I go? And at that point, I had only been studying acting for 2 years. And the idea of going out to Hollywood to pursue this crazy idea of becoming a professional actor was just crazy up until that moment.
Wow.
And when I was really honest with myself, I was like, you know what? if I was one of the people that was stuck up at the top of those towers, and if I had a second chance of doing whatever I wanted to do in life, I asked myself, what would I want to do? And I was like, I really like this acting thing. It's the most authentic and self-expressive, crazy, difficult way for me to feel like I am learning more about myself and the world. And I was like, something just said, go out to LA, just go and explore. And I think people do get those callings in life to go do something, and they don't because they fear that it's not going to work out, or what people are going to think about what they did or didn't do, or what people are going to say. Well, if I told people I was going to Hollywood to pursue an acting career, what do you think people would say? Some would say like, dude, are you crazy? You know how difficult that is. And some people would be supportive, but I knew I needed to do this for myself. And I was like, I feel like I've got a second chance at life. So I'm just going to go for it. And so I decided to go back to Chicago for a little bit. And when I jumped into a taxi and made my flight, went through the Holland Tunnel, driving down the New Jersey Turnpike. And it was like 3 weeks after the towers had gotten hit, and they were still smoking, and the stench was still real. And as I'm driving down the New Jersey Turnpike, looking across the Hudson River, I just started feeling like, I started feeling emotional. And then I got to the airport, and I'm like checking in, and I went through security, and I started feeling like, I don't know what was coming up. And I went into this restaurant, and I sat down, and I just freaking unleashed. I just started sobbing. And I was like, and it made me realize like our bodies have a way of protecting us from trauma and scary things that we're not even aware of. And fortunately, I was able to remove myself from that environment. A lot of people don't get that chance. And so people who live in these war-torn countries who live with that, you can tell that's why they have these shut down, blank looks on their face, and they're just hardened. Where I was able to go home to Chicago, and I was able to see a therapist, and I was diagnosed with PTSD, and then she put me on anti-anxiety medication, and someone would drop a fork in a restaurant, and I would just jump. And it took me almost a year before my nerves were settled enough. But I decided, you know what? Let's give this Hollywood thing a shot. And I moved out to Hollywood in January 2002. And this is the thing. I showed up with this energized, like, objective of I'm just going to go into this room. I'm glad to be alive. So let's do this. And that's why, like I write about it in my book, you don't have to be the smartest or the most talented. I only had 2 years acting experience. But what I started booking these roles over these other experienced actors, and like the casting director and the writer of a couple of projects I got cast on, they're like, you weren't the best actor that walked in here. You were raw, but we could tell there was something inside of you that just was like, you were there, you were present, you were in the moment, and you were just had this like this curious desire to just bring yourself to it. And we can work with that. It's when you show up in life doubting yourself or questioning yourself or trying to figure it out or show people how smart you are or how great you are. That's what turns people off. And so this is what I write about in my book. It's called Agile Artist: Life Lessons from Hollywood and Beyond.
That's amazing.
And so I started to pick up some of these lessons in life, and then ended up a few years after that pounding the pavement in LA, booking all my children. And then that's where we ended up with 6 months into my 3-year contract with the cancer diagnosis. And then a year later, it came back. And I just kept relying on, who do I choose to be in the face of this? I choose to be empowered, inspired. I choose to be Maximus. Whatever you choose to be.
Are you not entertained?
Are you not entertained? Yes. And that is really what has gotten me through this whole thing. And I just had surgery 4 weeks ago for prostate cancer, because they told me 17 years ago that because of the testicular cancer, having my testicles, and this is it's like, I hate that word, first of all. There's got to be a different word from like my balls, like whatever. So one of my chapters in my book, it's called Free Ballin', because I ain't got none. And so for 13 years, I didn't want anyone to know about this. So I hid it. I didn't talk about it. But the more I started talking about this, the more I started to feel okay. And it made me like, after having your balls removed as a man, it's like, well, then does that make me less of a man? And this is where I really started to think about, well, what makes a man? Is it your balls? Is it your manly parts? Or what makes a woman? And I realized what makes a man is someone who shows up with courage, strength, confidence, kindness, integrity, someone who demonstrates emotional intelligence. That to me is a man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the other stuff, when you find the right person in your life to share life with, they don't give a shit about what parts you have or what parts you don't have. When they see what's in here, that's what people fall in love with. Yeah. So that's why I keep reminding people, it's not about the Botox and the Ozempic and the, it's like, just focus on being fully self-expressed from here, because this is what people fall in love with. And it doesn't matter all this other shit out there that we were talking about earlier with regards to trying to attain that outside validation for who you are, because that's what marketing companies and politicians know. They know how to play on your reptilian insecurities about, I need this and I need someone to tell me what to do in order for me to feel safe. Wrong. As you said earlier, when you tap into your inner spirit, your inner soul, the divine lives within each and every one of us, is what I believe. And that same acting teacher that had me write out that Academy Award winning letter, she had me write out my power 10. And my power 10, the very last one, is God works through me, as me, 24/7, producing amazing results. And so I just keep reminding myself of that. And then another one I like to say is, the universe, isn't it amazing that the universe is rigged in my favor?
Yeah. I use that. I have, well, normally I have like a photo that says like the universe conspires to like, what is the quote? Damn it. What is it? The universe? The universe. Well, hold on. The universe.
I know. I always have these
buyer's quote. Damn it. Okay. When you want something, the universe. Okay. When you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you achieve it. Cool.
There you go.
Colin, this has just been such a joy. I'm totally taking these lessons with me, and it's really interesting what really, just keeps reaffirming, because the show is called Great Ones, and the episode I released this week was Peekaboo Street, and she talks about winning the gold medal for going downhill, and literally how you just did it in a different form of literally being like your Oscar winning speech. It's the same exact thing, and seeing it and embodying it. And what did it smell like? What did it taste like? What did it, embodying it fully. And that's what Peekaboo did. And it seems, it's my sort of thing is trying to find the patterns of life of, there's patterns, and there's it just feels like there's systems in place of how success happens. And it seems, if you're listening to Joe Dispenza, Tony Robbins, they all kind of have a similar outlook. And then all the people that they're coaching, are embodying that. So, and just everything just about the cancer journey and the stories. And, this has been a very inspiring conversation, and I'm so grateful for it, because I love your outlook on life. And literally, because sometimes it's like these ebbs and flows of life where I'm constantly trying to merge. So I say $100 million Susie with current Susie, because that's what I want to be able to fund the films that I want to make with my best friends, and I want to like who do I need to be? How do I need to show up? And like trying to figure that out, and and embodying like and doing like every night before I go to sleep, I'm listening to Joe Dispenza of just like doing the meditations. And even though I already like talk to God and meditate, but I'm trying to take it a step further, where I feel like as a kid, I would do that all the time of like, I'm going to Duke University, I'm full scholar. Like I manifested like so many amazing things, but it was really hard and really difficult and really painful half the time. And I feel like it doesn't need to be. So I'm like also trusting and, being like, wow, sometimes I'm impatient. I'm like, I want it to happen now, and you're like, like, why isn't it working? And so
great advice I got was just step off the hamster wheel. We create the hamster wheel and then we jump on it.
I just need to go work out. I think that's what it is. I just need to, instead of doing that with my mind, I just need to like a racehorse needs to run.
The mental and spiritual, mental or spiritual gym. If I may, this is my Agile Artist Manifestation Playbook.
I love this.
This is everything that I've created and what we've been talking about today in terms of manifesting and quantum jumping. And so on the first page, your journey awaits. And then I get
Is there an audiobook? Do you have an audiobook as well?
There's an audiobook for the Agile Artist, my life lessons from Hollywood and beyond. But this is interactive. It takes what I talk about in the book and it makes it interactive, where you get to create your life based on some chakra work. We have
that's amazing.
Brain dump bucket. So each week you dump out whatever is in your noggin into the brain dump bucket.
Oh, this is so good.
And then
I need this.
And then you prioritize it into one of these 4 quadrants: urgent, important, not urgent, important.
Oh, this is amazing.
Quadrants. And our dreams and our goals, the things that we really want to aspire towards creating, whether it's writing that script or taking that vacation to Italy or whatever, those are the things we usually push down and kick that can down the road.
Yeah.
And those are the things you put into the quadrant 2. And then what you do is you start to quantum jump and manifest by, you've got a 90-day plan, and you write in your 90 days, in the next 90 days, you write out what is going to be accomplished on what date. And then you put it into your weekly calendar into these 30-minute time blocks.
Where can I buy this?
On Amazon. On Amazon.
Let's go.
But I'll autograph one for you. I'll send it to you.
Oh.
Yeah.
I would love that.
Each day, then you have a daily planner. And each day you get to create yourself. Today I am. So again, you are informing your subconscious of who you are, who you choose to be, so that you're not waking up and be like, oh crap, what do I have today? Oh God, I have to do this. I have an audition. I have a podcast. Oh man, where am I supposed? And so
kind of sounds like me a little bit sometimes, you know what I mean? You're just like, you go to your phone. It's the worst thing. Right. I've been trying to do the not immediately go to your phone, like kind of wake up, but then it's like, so like Joe Dispenza is like, don't go to your phone, like have like it's hard because it's like, you're like, I got a million things I got to do. People need me. Like, it's the hamster wheel.
Orient and create your manifestations for the day. You've got a reminder to drink your 6 glasses of water. You got your 2 meditation sessions, your workout. You get to activate your chakras. You put in your schedule, and then over here's your notes. And then every day I give you a word prompt to activate the creative side of your brain by drawing a word. So for this day, draw inspiration.
Right.
So you tap into the creative side of who you are. And then at the end of the week, you have Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Well, I like there's so much more ground to cover, but thank you for next time.
A whole nother level.